So now that you know the theory behind creating your own custom classes, let's see it in action. So we're going to create a new Xcode project. We'll use the single view application template. And this time we'll call it Combat Race Cars, the name of our new cool app. Make sure that Use Automatic Reference Counting is selected and click Next. And then go ahead and save it in your class projects folder. Now our app is ready to get set up. The first thing we're going to need to do is create our custom class. I'm going to go ahead and click on the viewcontroller.m file only because when I create this new file, I want that file to be created in a certain place. And you'll see that in a second. Go up to File, New, select File, and to create our custom class, make sure that Cocoa Touch is selected, and we'll select the Objective-C class. Click on Next, and we'll name our class Race Car. Notice that when we're naming a class, we don't follow the camel case name lettering convention, where the first letter is a lowercase. The convention for naming classes is that the first letter is uppercase and each subsequent word also has an uppercase letter. So capital R and capital C for race car class. Below that it says subclass of, and from this list you want to select NSObject. We haven't talked about what subclasses are yet or how that works. We'll explain that in a later lesson, but for now make sure that you select NSObject as a subclass. And then click Next. It would ask you where you want to save the file. Go ahead and accept the default location for that for now. And it will create your new class files. Notice that for me, it created a racecar.h and a racecar.m file right below that viewcontroller.m file. One of the ways that Xcode works is when you create a new file, it'll insert that file right below the file that you currently have selected, which is why I selected viewcontroller.m first, so we'll all have these files initially located in the same spot. So we want to create a new class file, and what we got were actually two files, a .h file and a .m file. Class files in Objective-C always come in a .h and with two files associated with it, a .h and a .m file. So what are these files? Well, imagine if you're going to a restaurant. When you go into the restaurant, they hand you a menu, and a menu lists everything at that restaurant that you can order. Let's say on the menu you see tacos, and you want to order tacos. Tacos is just one line on the menu, but back in the kitchen, to make tacos, there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes. There's somebody who's getting the taco shells and inserting ground beef and the lettuce and the cheese and the salsa and setting it up all nice and putting it on a plate. There's a lot of work that goes into creating a taco. Well, in this metaphor, the .h file is like the menu. Just a simple description of everything that's available in your class. The .h file lists everything in your class, all the properties of your class and the things that it can do. The .m file is the implementation file where all the difficult work to make those things happen is happening. This will become clearer later, but for now know that the .h file just lists the things that your class can do, and the .m file is where all the difficult code is written to make those things happen. So, with our race car, let's open up the .h file. You'll notice that there's some commented code at the top here that you didn't have to write. And we're going to work in between the @interface and @end directives. Between the @interface and @end is where all the code you're going to write for describing the things that your class is and can do. The first thing we want our race car to have is a color property. We want to be able to assign color to each race car object we create. So we're going to define that as a property of the race car class. To do that, you'll type the following: at property, then open parentheses, and for now type non-atomic, comma, strong, and then ns string, and we'll say car color, star car color. So the name of our property will be car color, and now we're using the normal camel case naming convention. So great. We now have a race car class, and the one thing our race cars can do is have a color. Well, let's go and create our race car objects now. Now I'm going to open up the viewcontroller.m file. Remember that when the single view app template basically launches one view into the iPhone, what we're going to have our app do is when that view is launched, we'll create a car object and assign a color. So inside our view did load curly braces, as we did in our earlier exercises, this is where we'll write our code. So I want to create my car object. The thing is, right now this view controller class, the viewcontroller.h&m class, don't know anything about the race car class. Even though they're right next to each other in my project, we need to tell the code in the viewcontroller class about the race car class. We do that by using an import statement. So below the import statement at the top here, I'm going to add another import statement that says import quote racecar.h, close the quotes. And by doing that, essentially my viewcontroller class is saying, oh, there's a race car class. Oh, now I understand everything about what race cars can do. It's basically looking at the race car menu or the race car header file, the .h file, and understanding everything the race car can be and do. Now that that's imported, I can go back inside this view control curly braces and say race car, and it should now offer to autocomplete that for me. The little C to the left designates that it knows it's a class now. And my first race car, I'll just call star first race car using camel case. And to complete the creation of that race car object, we do the same thing we did with, like, for example, an NS string object. Opening up the two square braces, saying race car alloc init. So basically creating some memory space for our race car and initializing that race car object. Now, what's the one thing our race car can do? It can have a color. So let's assign a color for our first race car. On the next line down, I'm going to say first race car, and I can set the property of an object by just typing a dot and then using that property name. In this case, it's car color. And we'll set the first car color to red, using the red string, at quote red, close quote, and then with a semicolon. So now we've created a race car object instance. That object is called first race car, and we've assigned the car color property to be red. The last thing I want to do to make sure this is running correctly is use an nslog statement to check that everything's working as I expect it to. So I'm going to, a couple lines below, begin an nslog statement, nslog, and I'm going to say at quote the color of the first car is, and now I want to insert that car color property. So I'm going to use the placeholder of %at, close my quote, and then I need to pass in the variable name, the variable I want to appear in that placeholder. In this case, I'll type comma, open a square brace, type first race car, and then that property name, car color. Close the square brace, close my parentheses, and then with a semicolon. So in my as-log segment, I've got a placeholder with the %at, and what I'm going to pass through that %at is the car color of first race car. I just set it to red, so what I expect this line in the output console to read, the color of the first race car is red. Let's see if that works correctly. I'm going to run, click the build and run button, and when the app runs in my output console, I get exactly what I expect to get, which is the color of the first car is red. So I was able to create a first race car object from my race car class, set the color to red, and then have it echo back out to me that that was done correctly.